Hello everyone. Today we're going to be modifying a standard PlayStation 4 Gen 1 controller, and we're going to be putting on some new thumbsticks. These are thumbsticks that I bought from Z Labs for £5.37 on Amazon. This here is an Extreme Rate Red Soft Touch Upper Shell from Extreme Rate, again off of Amazon, £10.99. It comes with a screwdriver and replacement screws, which is very handy because you will strip a couple of heads. And most importantly, as I'm getting it out here, you will see a soft touch. I think they use some sort of silicone on the shell itself. Upper shell for a PlayStation 4 controller. Later on we'll go into what you need to look out for when you're replacing your controller, so that you don't buy the wrong shell. Now we're going to have a quick look. Here's the screwdriver that came with the shell kit, and we're just going to take off the 4 screws on the back of the controller. Apologies for the state of the controller, it is rather filthy. Believe me, it will be cleaned up before the final reassembly. So you just need to start off by taking out the 4 screws on the back of the controller. This really is the easiest, or it should at least be the easiest part of the job. You'll see later on that I'll be using a larger screwdriver that I got with a replacement battery, which we'll be showing off later on. We'll show you how to install a replacement battery as well as the thumbsticks and the top shell. I would actually recommend that you stick with this smaller screwdriver because it's much easier to strip the heads on the screws using a larger screwdriver that gives you more mechanical purchase. I know that that seems counterintuitive, that you should use a screwdriver that gives you less purchase, but honestly it will save you from stripping the heads on those screws and potentially not being able to get the heads back off again. So there's the final screw, leaving the bottom of the controller there. I tried a little bit too early to pull it out of the controller. Eventually I managed to get it free, so that is now all 4 of the screws out. Now, to remove the top shell, I would recommend using some kind of plastic card. I happen to have a Nando's membership card handy, or a points card handy. Just pry up a corner and then slide the card along. You can also use specific prying tools as well as guitar picks, actually. They make very good pry tools. But you basically just want to use something that won't damage the mating edges of the controller. So just get it in there, pry it up as best you can. This controller is going to come apart a little easier for me because I've already had it apart once. So, you know, just a disclaimer there, it will take a little bit more finagling. I will point out in this video where the slightly more delicate parts are that you really need to pay attention to. If you look where I point my screwdriver at, you'll see that there are 2 retaining clips. They have little square holes in them that clip into the bottom. Try to be careful with those, but honestly, when you're pulling it apart, it's very difficult to badly damage your controller. When I first pulled this apart, the R2 button actually it disengaged from the rest of the body, so I had to refit that, but it was fairly straightforward. There are guides on the internet that will show you how to do that. So when you get your controller apart, put it down like this. The first thing you'll need to do is you'll have to detach the ribbon cable that attaches the LED to the circuit board there. It has a hard blue plastic tab on it. You can use a pair of tweezers to get purchase on that and pull it out. You could also use your fingers for the sake of trying to get an unobstructed view of the job. In this instance, I tried using tweezers. They do a pretty decent job. You'll notice there, that is the reset button which just popped out of the unit. It's very easy to replace. There's a hole where I'm pointing to just there. Just slot it in. It's got a locating key to it, and it will just slot back in just like that. So back onto the ribbon cable. You can pull it out with your fingers, as I said, but if you have a pair of tweezers or pliers, they will make a much quicker job of it. Just pull it up fairly firm, and it will come clear of the rest of the unit. You can put that to one side, and now you can get on with removing the battery. So this is a 1000 milliamp battery. That's the standard size of battery that comes with the PlayStation 4 controller. I actually ended up buying an uprated battery from Paxo. It's a 2000 milliamp battery. It costs £20 on Amazon. Definitely worth checking out. All of these things will be linked in the description below. So to remove the power cable, you can use your thumb and forefinger as I'm demonstrating here, but honestly, again, if you have a pair of tweezers or needle nose pliers, they do a much better job. Just get a firm grip either side of the plug and then just wiggle it from side to side and it will come out with no trouble whatsoever. So that's the battery removed there. It's a very straightforward job, and I would recommend, if you're going to be replacing the thumbsticks or you're going to be changing the fascia of your controller, you would do well to upgrade your battery, especially if you had the controller as long as I have. I think it's been about 5 years. So now you'll see that there's a battery tray there that can be removed, and I don't think you have to remove it actually, but I did for the sake of just showing how to do it. There are 2 retaining clips, one either side. You can access them like I am here with a screwdriver. Just very, very gently push and it will relieve the clip. Once that one is free, the other one should wriggle free with no trouble at all. You can just put that to one side. You won't be needing that until reassembly. Now you'll notice a screw that is on the left hand side as I'm looking at it and the right hand side as you're looking at it. If you look at the controller here, you'll notice that there's a post where I'm pointing to right now that is also on the same side as that screw. Before you order a replacement shell, make sure that you have the right one. Obviously there is a difference between the first, second, third generation of PlayStation 4 controller and the 4th generation, which had the light bar on the touch bar itself. But even between generation 1 and generation 3 there is a difference in how the posts on these things are set up. So it's worth disassembling your controller slightly first, just to make sure that the screw is on the correct side, that you get the correct fascia for your controller. With that out of the way, we can remove that screw, and all that screw does is it holds the circuit board down to the back of the controller. With that out of the way, you can remove the controller, the back fascia from the circuit board. But one thing that you do have to do, and I'm just demonstrating there that it's much easier if you actually push up on the joysticks to release the circuit board. One thing I forgot to do at this point was remove another ribbon cable that connects the circuit board to the back of the controller. Give it a second and I'll realise my mistake. There we go. So I've realised now that that ribbon cable needs to come out as well. Now there is a small metal clip, like a hinge, which when the camera focuses, you'll notice I'm going to point to. It's right there. There's a little metal hinge. You can get your fingernail under that hinge and pull it backwards. It opens very easily. And once you do that, you can just use your thumb and forefinger, or again tweezers, just to pull that ribbon cable out of the unit. Now, I misspoke earlier. This is the ribbon cable that connects, I believe, to... No, I didn't misspeak, actually. See, this is a one-take wonder. I'm not redoing this. So that ribbon cable connects to the touchpad on the front of the unit. So once that's disconnected, you can take the circuit board out, and you'll see that all of the circuitry, all of the stuff that matters is already attached to this board. Now, this is the reason why we're taking this apart. These thumbsticks are well past their use-by date. Very easy to remove them. You just get a firm hold on the chassis and just pull up and they'll remove themselves pretty much. You'll notice that the thing that the stick fits over the top is actually keyed so that it'll only go on one of 2 ways. It doesn't really matter which way around. As long as it fits on snugly, you should be fine. But that is what's commonly referred to, I believe, as dragon rot. It's a really strange name for a basically failing joystick. But, you know, if you're going to replace one, you might as well replace the other. So we're going to take the other one off here. And with that removed, we've now disassembled and taken everything off that we need to. And we can start putting on our new parts. Starting again with the Z Labs joystick replacement pack. You can get these in the original colour, which I have. You can also get them in blue, and you can get them in red as well. And I kind of wish I'd got the red ones actually, because they would work really nicely with the fascia that I bought. Here's a comparison of the original, if the camera works. The original on the right and the replacement on the left. You can see that the one on the left still has that nice rough texture on it, which means you're going to get extra grip. So to put these on, you just need to make sure that the key, the oval of the stick, lines up with the socket, and then you can just push it on and push it down firmly until it won't go down any further, just like that. Once it feels like you have a good connection, you should be fine. You can always push them down further once it's in situ. Now we get to the interesting part, changing over your buttons. Now, I found it much easier to have the pads side by side and literally just take stuff out and put it in to the new one in situ. It just meant that I didn't get anything back to front, upside down, transversed. Much easier to do it that way. So you take the silicone cover off first, and then you can remove the button and put it in. It's keyed, so it'll only go in one of two ways. You could have it in upside down if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. Then you put the silicone over the top. You'll notice there are a couple of red pegs that stick out. They just help you locate the silicone pad. Now I'm taking off the pad for the face buttons, and these face buttons I'm now just going to take out and I'm going to pop them in. Now the face buttons are keyed so that they will only fit one way, which is really handy, except for when you get them turned slightly the wrong way, and then, like I'm about to with, I think, the triangle button, I'm going to look at it for a couple of seconds like an idiot trying to figure out why it won't fit. Eventually I figure out that I've just got it turned around the wrong way. So that goes in, no problem at all, and we move on to the circle button. If you can do the face buttons and the silicone pad, the D pad is exactly the same, only a quarter of the hassle, because the actual D pad is one solid unit rather than 4 individual buttons. So that's a very easy job to do, but it doesn't harm to show you, so we're going to show you. So in goes the triangle button, and now the circle button should go in with no trouble whatsoever. There you go. Then the silicone pad goes over the top, lining up 4 little red posts that are situated in between the different buttons. You'll see me pushing down in the areas where those red posts are, and that's located nicely. Again, if you're worried that it's not seated properly, just take your time and make sure that those red posts are poking up. And once the controller is put back together, once you've screwed it together, it will tighten everything down and make sure that nothing's going anywhere. Now, because the D-pad isn't necessarily directionally awkward, or it's not necessary to get the D-pad in exactly the same way, I turned it around so you could just get a slightly better look at it. That's the silicone pad coming off, and here's the D-pad, which I literally just drop into place. It's super easy. And then the silicone pad just goes over the top. Just like that. And that is job done. We've only got 3 buttons left. That's the share button, the option button. They're easier to get out just by tipping the controller up like that. Now these are keyed so that they will only go in one way on one side. So just keep trying them until they fit. It won't take very long. Once you've figured one out, the other one will go straight in the other side. But they basically have 3 key marks, which I couldn't quite make show up on the camera, but you can just about make out. There are 3 little prongs on 3 sides, and it's smooth on the other side. The smooth side is facing inwards towards the touchpad. The key sides face outwards and to the up and down axis of the controller. My words are failing me. It's 1 AM. Now, the touchpad could be difficult to remove, but I didn't find it to be. All I did was, as you're going to see here, I swung it up and then pushed on the top of the hinge and fed it through the controller. And then to fit it into the new controller, it was literally just the opposite of what I had already done. It doesn't need to snap into place. It literally just sits in place and nestles nicely. I'm just showing there that the controller is now completely empty of all buttons and anything that we need. We've harvested everything that we need for it, and now we can move on with fitting the circuit board back onto this unit. So I've taken the circuit board there. It's got the little Dualshock motors at the bottom, which I hear are going to be replaced in the PS5 by actual like Nintendo Switch styles rumble packs. That should be really cool. So you just line the circuit board up with the pegs. It should line up quite nicely. It hasn't got many other places it can go. Once that's lined up, make sure that the very next thing you do is you screw it down just to stop it from slipping around. So just pop that screw back in the hole, make sure that it's lined up with the post underneath, and then just gently screw it down. Don't over tighten it, but make sure that it's snug. I actually left it slightly too loose there, so once I was fitting the battery, I actually did tighten it back up a little bit more. But that's basically it. That is how the controller will look. Obviously, it needs to be cleaned, and that's something I should have done while the buttons were out, but I was cognizant of wanting to get this done as quickly as possible, so the cleaning took place after the fact. I'm afraid you will just have to take my word for that one. There is a photo at the very end of this video which will show the controller when it's all said and done. It's fit up, it's nicely finished, all the gaps are taken care of. So this is just this is an important step. If you take your needle nose pliers, it makes it much easier to actually put this back into place. It's not quite straight there, so I take another go at it, and that just goes in, and then you just pop down that little gate and it just lock it in place. You don't need to force it. It's very easy just to pop it in very carefully. See, I'm just scraping away a little bit of the smegma. It's not actually smegma, I've been rubbing my what's-its on it. Okay, so now we need to put the battery tray back in. That is as simple as getting it lined up in place and then just pushing it down until you hear a satisfying click on both sides. It is actually not fully pushed down on the reset button side there, but that is something that I put right when I fit this. The battery, this was actually filmed a couple of days later. The battery was delayed, but it finally came in. It's a 2000 milliamp battery from Paxo, and it comes really well packaged. It's cellophane wrapped, as you can see here, so I'm just taking the final bit of cellophane off of it so that I can get access to the connector, which will allow me to plug it into the unit. It comes partly charged, but obviously you'll want to fully charge it before using it for the first time. The connector there is keyed in such a way that you can only plug it in one direction. And I'm just comparing the old controller battery to the new one just to show you that even though it's double the capacity, as you can read on the back there, 2000 milliamp, 3.7 volt, it's exactly the same size, so it will fit in to the tray with no trouble whatsoever. You'll have a completely stock looking controller if you want it, and that literally, my hand is obscuring it slightly there. I apologise, I'm not really that experienced with doing videos of this type, but the controller battery fits in very nicely. That connector just snaps in place, and then you just tuck those battery wires out of the way. That should be fine. And that's that done. All we have to do now is reattach the back of the controller, which is easier said than done. First thing first, we have to reattach the ribbon cable that attaches the LED bar to the rest of the circuit board. I'm just pointing out there that the blue of that ribbon cable needs to be facing outwards once you've plugged it in, otherwise it won't work. It's really an awkward job to get this done while trying to get it captured on camera, and I'm afraid I didn't do the best job of doing it. But once you see how it's situated, it's fairly straightforward to do it when you're only concentrating on getting the job done. It's not so easy to get it done when you're worrying about getting it all captured on camera. So don't worry yourselves too much. Needle nose pliers make this job very, very easy. I should have used them, but I was being in a bit of a rush. I was impatient to get it all finished and fit up and looking nice and taking photos. So it does eventually fit in there. And then with that in place, now all that remains is to get this the back of this case on. Now I'm showing you how not to do it to begin with. How you don't want to do this is try to fit this part on first. You really don't want to do that. Ideally, you would be watching a video like this and seeing how to do it. These posts get in the way. So what you want to do is take that controller off and hook the stalks over those bottom posts first. Once you've got those hooked over, then you can concentrate on snapping the controller back together. And it's more of a kind of try to get everything snapped over at once kind of job. But make sure, as I've shown there, that the divider between the R1 and R2 and L1 and L2 buttons get put in place. Once that's done, you can just push down on the whole unit and it should snap together fairly easily, as you'll see in a second. There we go. Once it's snapped together, it's a good idea. Just check all your edges, make sure they're all lined up. They won't be perfect because the screws will tighten them down to their final finish, but you just want to make sure that everything's meeting up quite nicely. And then once you've done that, check all of the buttons work, that they're all springy enough and that the joysticks return to center. The only thing that you shouldn't check is the PlayStation button, only because it will turn your console on and it's just really annoying. So once you've got that done, the only thing that remains is to put the screws back in. And we all know how to put screws into things, so I've actually sped up this next little bit of the video. I'm just showing there the packaging for the battery and what else came with it. It comes with these handy little clips which you can use to pry the controller apart initially. That is the screwdriver which I never should have used because it ended up stripping the heads off of the screws. It gave me slightly too much mechanical advantage and I ended up just absolutely mullering the screws in the back of the unit. But I've sped that up for you so you don't have to suffer through it. So once all four of those are in, the job is basically done. Now there's a little bit of gapping on the controller when I finish here. I have since tightened the screws slightly more just to eliminate that gapping, so everything is lined up perfectly now. But I would just recommend that you just take your time with it and use the smaller screwdriver so that you don't risk stripping them. You can see on the bottom left there that there's a little bit of a gap. But once you press it down, there's the final product, and tighten the screws, you'll be fine. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.